When your cat looks at you, do you know what they actually see? You probably think they see their owner. The person who fills the bowl, opens the door, controls the warmth and the food and the space they live in. The one in charge. The human in the relationship. But that is not what the science shows. And when you understand what researchers have actually found about how a cat's brain categorizes the specific human they are most bonded to, the word owner will stop feeling like the right one. Not because it is wrong in a legal or practical sense, but because it does not capture what is actually happening inside your cat's nervous system when they look at you. They are not looking at their owner. They are looking at something their biology coded a long time ago. And that coding is one of the most remarkable findings in the modern science of feline attachment. And there is one discovery in particular I want you to stay for. Because what researchers found when they studied how cats behave around their bonded person compared to how they behave around strangers is something most people have never heard. And once you hear it, the word owner will feel permanently inadequate. Let us talk about what is really happening. 1. Cats never developed a submissive relationship with humans. To understand what your cat actually sees when they look at you, you first have to understand what they do not see. And what they do not see is what most people assume. Dogs, across 15,000 years of domestication, developed a specific social orientation toward humans that is rooted in a modified version of the pack hierarchy they inherited from wolves. Dogs look to humans for leadership. They read human signals as authoritative cues. They have been shaped, genetically and behaviorally, to orient toward the human as a social superior whose directions carry weight. Cats were domesticated differently, and the difference matters enormously. Cats were not bred to work with humans in coordinated tasks the way dogs were. They were not selected for pack-oriented behavior because their wild ancestors were not pack animals. The African wildcat, from whom domestic cats descend, was a solitary hunter. It did not defer to a social hierarchy. It did not look to another being for behavioral cues about how to navigate the world. What this means, and what research has consistently confirmed, is that a domestic cat does not have a neurological template for owner. They do not have a category for the being who controls their resources that functions like the human concept of authority or ownership. The word owner implies a power relationship, and cats simply did not evolve to experience power relationships of that kind. So if they do not see you as their owner, what do they see? 2. The science says they see something closer to a parent. In 2019, researchers at Oregon State University published a study that genuinely changed how behavioral scientists understand the cat-human bond. They used a protocol called the Secure Base Test, originally designed to measure attachment between human infants and their caregivers, and applied it to domestic cats and their owners. The results were striking. Cats in the presence of their bonded person showed the same patterns of secure base behavior that human infants show in the presence of their primary caregiver. They used their person as an anchor from which to explore an unfamiliar environment. They returned to them when uncertain. They regulated their stress response based on that person's presence or absence. When the person left the room, the cat's cortisol levels rose and exploratory behavior decreased. When the person returned, they settled. This is not the behavior of an animal toward a provider of resources. This is the behavior of an animal toward an attachment figure, the being who represents safety, whose presence makes the world feel manageable, whose absence makes the world feel uncertain. In human developmental psychology, this relationship has a specific name. It is the bond between a child and their primary caregiver, not between an employee and an employer, not between a pet and its owner. Between a being who is still building its sense of safety in the world and the one presence that, above all others, provides that safety. Your cat does not see a provider when they look at you. Their nervous system sees an attachment figure, and the distinction is not small. 3. They treat you differently than they treat any other human. Here is the test that makes this undeniable. Not a laboratory test, the one that has been running in your home every day since your cat arrived. Think about how your cat behaves around you compared to how they behave around other humans. A visitor enters your home. Your cat may investigate them, tolerate them, ignore them, or retreat from them. What they almost never do with a stranger is what they do with you. The vertical tail greeting, the slow blink offered freely, the paw placed on your hand during a quiet moment, the choice to sleep pressed against your body. The particular quality of approach that uses the whole loosened body rather than a measured, cautious one. Research into cat behavior across different social partners has consistently found that cats display a qualitatively different behavioral repertoire with their bonded person than with other familiar or unfamiliar humans. It is not a difference of degree. It is a difference in kind. The behaviors reserved for the bonded person are not simply more of what everyone else receives. They are behaviors that do not appear in interactions with anyone else. And if this is changing the way you see your cat right now, go ahead and subscribe. Every video on this channel is built around what the science actually says, not what we assume. What we cover next is the part that changes everything. 4. Your scent triggers a response in them that nothing else does. A study from Emory University gave researchers a way to look directly inside a dog's brain while it was smelling different scents. They used fMRI technology to measure which brain regions activated in response to each smell. And what they found, when the dog encountered the scent of their bonded person, was activation in the reward center of the brain, the region associated with positive anticipation, with pleasure, with the particular neurological state that the brain produces around things it has learned are deeply good. The same scent response pattern has been documented in cats. Your specific scent, not human scent in general, not the scent of familiar people, your scent specifically, produces a response in the reward circuitry of a bonded cat's brain that is distinct from their response to any other stimulus. This is not the response of a nervous system processing the presence of an owner. An owner provides food and shelter, and those things produce responses in the brain too. But the food reward center and the social bonding reward center are not the same region. What activates in a bonded cat at the scent of their person is the part of the brain that has been shaped across millions of years of mammalian evolution to respond to the presence of the beings who matter most, the ones the nervous system has filed under irreplaceable. That filing did not happen because you open a can of food twice a day. It happened because of everything you are to them that has nothing to do with the bowl. 5. They develop behaviors specifically to communicate with you. Here is something that most people do not know about cats. The meow, in all its forms, the short chirp greeting, the long insistent yowl, the quiet trill that sounds like a question, does not exist between adult cats in the wild. Adult cats do not meow at each other. They use body language, scent, and vocalization in forms that are entirely different from the meow. The meow is a behavior that domestic cats developed specifically and exclusively for communication with humans. Researchers believe it evolved as a modification of the sound a kitten makes to its mother, selected over generations because it triggered a response in humans that served the cat's needs. Your cat did not inherit the meow from their wild ancestors as a general communication tool. They developed it as a human-directed language. This is the behavioral equivalent of a person learning your native language, not a translation of something they already said in another tongue. A new form of expression created specifically to reach you. And the particular sounds your cat makes are not generic. Research has shown that cats develop individualized vocalization repertoires calibrated to the specific humans they live with. The sound your cat uses to greet you may not be the same sound they use with anyone else in the household. They are, within the limits of what their anatomy allows, developing a language for you specifically, not for humans, for you. 6. They regulate their emotional state based on your presence. This is perhaps the most important piece of evidence, and the one most people never consider. Research measuring cortisol levels in domestic cats across different social conditions has found that cats show significantly lower stress hormones in the presence of their bonded person compared to any other social condition. Not in the presence of any familiar human. Not simply in the presence of a human. In the presence of their specific person. Your cat's body chemistry changes when you are in the room. Not because you feed them. Not because you represent safety in the general sense of a safe environment, but because you specifically are the being around whom their nervous system has learned to regulate itself. A cat who has just experienced something stressful will show elevated cortisol in the presence of a stranger, elevated cortisol in the presence of a familiar but non-bonded human, and significantly lower cortisol in the presence of their bonded person. The cortisol drop in response to that specific person is the physiological signature of what developmental psychologists call a primary attachment bond. The bond between a child and the one presence in the world that makes the body feel safe. Your cat does not use you to regulate their resources. They use you to regulate themselves. And that distinction is the difference between a service relationship and an attachment relationship, between owner and something that has no clean human word for it. The closest one we have is family. 7. So what does your cat actually see? If not an owner, then what? The science gives us a picture, even if it does not give us a word. They see the being whose scent activates their reward center before you have entered the room. The presence that makes their cortisol drop and their body loosen. The one face their nervous system has learned to read with more precision and more attention than any other. The sound that registers differently in their brain than any other human voice. The anchor they return to when the world feels uncertain. The safe base from which the rest of their experience becomes navigable. They see the being they developed a new language to reach. The one they greet with the full vocabulary of feline affiliative behavior that they give to no one else. The one whose continued presence their body tracks quietly across the ordinary hours of an ordinary day. They do not see an owner. They see the one the science keeps arriving at, no matter which measure is used, no matter which behavioral or neurological or physiological lens is applied. They see the one their biology has placed at the center of its world. They see you. And to a cat, that is the highest designation their species knows how to make. If you watched this and felt the word owner shift slightly in your mouth, that shift is the science working. Not sentiment. Not projection. The actual documented biological reality of what a domestic cat's nervous system does with the person it has decided matters most. Every video on this channel begins the same way, with a question most cat owners have never stopped to ask. And then we go looking for the real answer. Not the simplified version, not the comfortable assumption, the actual science, the studies, the behavioral research that takes years to surface and rarely reaches people in a way that feels like a real conversation. That is what we do here every single time. If this video gave you something, hit like, drop a comment, and tell us what word you would use instead of owner. And subscribe, because what we are covering next will change the way you see your cat all over again. The more you understand them, the closer you get to something most people spend a lifetime living beside and never fully seeing. And that is always worth staying for.